to give you a bit of background on this, in 2019, I authored a textbook called Crime Lab Report, an anthology on forensic science in the era of criminal justice reform. And in Crime Lab Report, I wrote about these issues in quite a bit of depth for what I would describe as a more academic or scholarly audience. The book was published through academic press, and they tend to cater to a more scholarly audience. But more recently, which is why I'm discussing this with you today, I released the second edition of my third book, which was titled 50 Situations Awaiting Every Forensic Scientist, Professional Effectiveness Handbook. And I'm excited to say that this is an audiobook, which just became available, so it's in print and audio. One of the major changes in the second edition of 50 Situations is the inclusion of a new concluding chapter or closing chapter, and that is titled A Different Kind of Science. And the inspiration for this supplemental chapter was my own, or I should say, came from my own coaching clients in forensic science, as well as participants of my workshops and other folks who might reach out to me to ask a question or share a thought. And what seems to have been happening is that there is an entirely new generation of forensic scientists and even trial lawyers who do not remember the O.J. Simpson trial. They do not remember the very early years of the Innocence Movement, the Innocence Project, when there was a sustained and very well coordinated public relations attack and judicial attack on the credibility and integrity of forensic science by activists in the Innocence Movement. And now these forensic scientists and lawyers and whomever else may take an interest in forensic science, who are in the early years of their careers and are now asking questions about things they are hearing and reading in the public domain. The worst of those criticisms, of course, or at least I think is fair to say, is that flawed or invalid forensic evidence or flawed forensic testimony is leading the reasons for erroneous convictions, that it's a leading cause of erroneous convictions in the United States. So they are just now trying to make sense of things like the 2009 National Research Council report on trying to strengthen forensic science, the 2016 PCAST report, which was the President's Council of Advisors on Science and Technology under the President Obama's administration, and other official sources claiming that forensic science cannot be trusted and continues to do great harm to the fairness and integrity of our criminal justice system. If you happen to be a young forensic scientist, what a horrible thing to hear about this new profession that you've chosen. So this is serious. And because, quite candidly, 50 Situations was really in need of some updating, I wanted to address this issue for new forensic scientists, especially that are now learning about the Innocence Movement, its advocates, and their claims about forensic science. And I certainly did not want to, how would I say it? I didn't want to reflexively defend forensic science from an ideological standpoint or try to make it out to be better than it actually is. And I certainly didn't want to ignore problems or weaknesses that might exist or do exist, because all professions have them, including forensic science. So let me read to you an excerpt from this new chapter in 50 Situations called A Different Kind of Science, and then I'll share some thoughts about it with you. So, quote, as you enter the profession of forensic science and begin the launch of your career, it is important for you to know that you are, in fact, joining a profession that is among the top preventers of erroneous convictions. Without you and your colleagues, many more injustices would occur. Don't ever forget that. So here's what we know about erroneous convictions and the role forensic science plays in these travesties of justice. When they happen, their causes are multifactorial, which is to say that a perfect storm of threats come together to create an unfair but plausible portrayal of an innocent defendant as being guilty. At the same time, mitigating conditions that would otherwise prevent these threats from harming the integrity of the judicial process are for some reason absent or compromised. Dr. John Gould at American University found in his own research on erroneous convictions that innocent defendants are most vulnerable when they are already known by the police, especially when there is an incorrect eyewitness account that implicates the defendant. Prosecutorial misconduct and incompetent defense representation might also conspire to produce erroneous convictions. But from my own research and deliberations on the causes of erroneous convictions, it's clear that something else is going on, something rarely factored into the equation. The evidence is clear that defendants who happen to be arrested and tried in overwhelmed criminal jurisdictions, these would be jurisdictions drowning in high case volumes with poor staffing and a scarcity of financial resources, are, without question, the most vulnerable to being erroneously convicted. Justice is impossible to deliver with an assembly line mentality. Justice requires caution, thoughtfulness, and attention to detail. When defendants are shuffled through a system like cattle and trials are held on shoestring budgets, the checks and balances that would otherwise prevent erroneous convictions become impaired. From there, all of the factors mentioned above become more of a threat, even to the point of catastrophe. Forensic science, with all its rigor and discipline, is a valuable mitigator of the chaos that enables erroneous convictions. So, why does forensic science then receive so much blame for judicial atrocities? Fortunately, it's a simple question with a simple answer, because forensic science is so popular. End quote. And from there, I go on to explain that forensic science tends to be a part of the criminal justice enterprise that gives people confidence. It does. Forensic science gives people confidence in the administration of justice. This means that to the degree that the general public knows or believes that science is used in the administration of justice, then they are going to have more confidence in it. But if you happen to be a criminal justice reform advocate, or activist, then the confidence of the public becomes a major problem for you. The public typically doesn't want to reform things that they are confident in.